So, what we're going to do today is wax our cheese. After it comes out of the press, you want to let it sit 3 to 5 days till it builds up a rind. That's a protective rind. It's still moist and stuff on the outside. Think of it like if you've ever bought a block of cheese and you just let it in your fridge and it starts to get hard. That's a protective coating. That's what it's done. The inside of it's real nice and good, but we want to stop it from the whole cheese turning into a rind. So we're going to put a protective wax coating. You need a double boiler, but I don't have one, so I've kind of improvised. Got me a nice pot, filled it up with some water, put it on boiling. Take another pot, put my cheese in it, cheese wax in it, and set it top. You don't want to fill it up so much that it overflows like it did there. Now the reason you use a double boiler is because the wax is flammable, or well, it's combustible. And so you don't want to directly heat it on the stove eye or it could burn. So as the inner pot's boiling, it's heating up the inner pot, and it's eventually going to melt the wax. Now I will warn you, if you're going to use your wax instead of vacuum sealer, whatever pot that you use to melt wax in, you might as well throw it away or just use it strictly for wax, because you're never going to get that 100% clean again. Now as this all is happening, I'll also talk about the brushes a little bit. Like I said, you need a natural bristled brush. We talked about when we were making the cheese. If you use a nylon brush, that nylon's going to melt when you dip it in the hot wax. So you need a natural bristled brush. Now I've also got a piece of paper and have written on the paper the type of cheese that we've made, along with the date that we're sealing it. And because this has got to age 6 or 8 or months or a year, I put this one I had a little bit of problem with. I didn't follow the directions 100%, and so I've marked down a note of what happened. So when I try to eat it, if it tastes good, then it wasn't a mistake. It was an experiment that turned out good, and so I can replicate that. And if it's bad, I'll know if I ever do that again that it may not be worth salvaging. I might feed it to the chickens or something. So don't try to have 15 blocks of cheese that you've had in your fridge for a year aging and think that you can remember them apart or tell them apart. So those notes are important, and they'll wax just straight onto the cheese, and I'll show you how that's done. You see this is melting pretty good now. It's not completely melted, but probably enough for me to start brushing a little on. You want 2 thin coats. You don't want to glob this stuff on, and it'll look kind of transparent the first coat. Done a little bit of an experiment here, and last time I had to clean my cutting board up, and if you know anything about wax, that's not always the funnest thing in the world to clean up. And I couldn't find my bacon wax paper, so I put some saran wrap down, or some plastic wrap. Probably not a good idea, but y'all know me. I believe in the spirit of experimentation, so we're gonna try that. Doesn't have to be very perfect the first time, because you're going to put another coat on here, but the idea is to completely seal the cheese airtight. Now there's little cracks and craters in the cheese that I'm trying to fill up a little bit with the brush. This isn't store-bought cheese. It's not going to look perfect. That's part of the charm. Now, I'm not going to try to wash this whole thing. I'm going to make sure I get all the way around it, and then I'm going to let it sit and cool a little bit. Then I'm going to flip it over and do the top. Just trying to make sure I get all the sides and the top done, and I'm going to let that cool a little bit so it doesn't glue itself to the board. I made a little bit of a mess here, but you know, it'll clean up pretty well. Flip it over. This stuff melts pretty quickly, but it also firms up pretty fast, so there's probably a whole lot of people who do this a lot prettier than I do. But, we'll see how it tastes. Let that firm up and then I'll start the second coat. Remember, having more thin coats is better than having a thick coat. It should be 2 good thin coats. I'll make sure that no air is going to get to your cheese, because it's going to sit in your fridge or in your basement or wherever that you're going to let this stuff sit for a number of months. Now, as I get more wax, eventually I'll be able to just dip this in it like they do in the factories, and it'll be a lot smoother surface. Okay, so we've got the whole cheese wheel has been coated at least twice. Some areas a little more. There's no pockets of cheese showing. So I'm going to show you how we label it. Get a little bit of wax, hot wax, and then our label. Sits right there on the wax. And when it cools, it's going to adhere perfectly. Let's just put a little extra. And that's going to fit on there just perfect. So then we just turn the heat off. We'll let that get hard again. Pour out our hot water. And then clean up all the wax that I've got all over the kitchen. Now we'll put this in the fridge. Let it sit for about, I like sharp cheddar, so we'll let it sit at least 8 months. Cut into it. Have a good piece of cheese. Appreciate it.
Tell them to come back in 8 months and hear the results.
Come back in 8 months and hear the results. Also, you can always go to our website, www.tngun.com.